So, guys, it's that time of the week again. Another episode from the Fantasy Kickabout. And this week, as you can tell, if you're watching via YouTube, you can see all the green of Ireland. And a coincidence as well that it happens to be on St. Patrick's Day. So we welcome back to the podcast Anto, who's back with us, and an Ireland season ticket holder in Neil Dowling, who joins us for the very first time. Happy Paddy Day, lads. Did you get up to much today?
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate the honour of being asked on. No, I obeyed by all the government advice, stayed at home, just plant a green jersey. That's all I did.
Good man, Dowling. Anto?
Basically the same. Ran around after kids and chilled at home.
We're probably still all wearing the jerseys and tops from first thing this morning. So, again, thanks for coming on again, lads. We're going to get into talking obviously about Ireland, the upcoming games, kind of a lot to get stuck into, a lot of decisions that Stephen Kenny even has to make. We might just start, Dowling, with you. Stephen Kenny, obviously 8 games into his tenure as Ireland manager. It's been a difficult time. Number one, were you a fan of his appointment? And number two, are you still a fan and believe in what Stephen Kenny's trying to do with this Ireland team?
No, I was not a fan of an appointment, but nothing against Stephen Kenny. I was a massive fan of him at Dundalk. I thought he did some great things there. It was just the nature of the appointment I was against. The way, giving the job for Mick for 2 years and then only 2 years. I've never seen an appointment done like that in sport. I'm not really sure what John Delaney was thinking fully true, but I mean, should have been like Stephen Kenny gets the 21 and then Mick gets the senior team, definitely. But Mick is in his, he's in his 60s. He's not going to be around forever. It would have come to Stephen Kenny. He's no young man. It would have come to him naturally anyway. There was no need for lock-in. That change had to happen after 2 years. Now, am I a fan and want to keep him? Yes, I think we should keep him. You have to remember, when he had done this, what he's trying, the way he got Dundalk to play, it wasn't completely overnight. And then you had a lot more access to the players. When you do when you're international, you get less than a week. And then the first day, you always have a few players carrying knocks and can't train. So it takes time to bring through that new style he's trying to play. So I would give him more time. I definitely think we have improved our style of play. I think what's killing us is we're lacking a bit of quality up front. And then maybe might have to consider Shane Duffy, the way we're playing, is he the best defender to put in there? Because he's not if you play a high line, he can be kind of caught out there, and Shane Duffy's great kind of last gaps defending and that, his body isn't the line, but the way he's Stephen Kenny might not be the right choice. But overall, there have been some positive signs. I certainly would keep him for the rest of the campaign.
Yeah, obviously Dowling touched on the whole appointment behind Stephen Kenny, Mick McCarthy at the time, and I agree, it was very bizarre. I don't know if they could have went about it in a way where saying Mick McCarthy's given the job for obviously the campaign, and then later on down the line making the announcement of Stephen Kenny. Same question to you, I suppose, Anto. Were you a fan of Stephen Kenny's appointment or coming in after Mick McCarthy, and do you still have faith in what he's trying to do with this Ireland squad?
Yeah, no, I agree. The way they did the appointment was bizarre, really, if you think about it. To say that, we'll have this fella in charge here, Mick, and then we're just going to change no matter really what happens, rather than just let that happen even behind closed doors, if that was the agreement, if that's what they wanted. But actually put it out there, I thought it was insane. But I was a big fan of him. I followed 21s a lot when Kenny was there, and followed League of Ireland a good bit and all when he was involved. So I think when the appointment was made to him, I was excited because the way he plays football is nearly kind of to the modern style. And, don't get me wrong, for a long time it's worked of kind of punting the ball and hope for the best from there. But I think the bringing in a new style was definitely a good change at the time. Anyway, obviously it's been a bit of a rocky start now, but no, I definitely stick with him for the foreseeable anyway, because I think given the time he will turn fortunes around, and given a bit more time he'll bring through more of them under 21 players that he knows, and there's hardly even players there that for the 21s he was keeping an eye on that mightn't necessarily got into the 21s, but come another year or two from now they could be good enough to be in the senior team that he's been keeping an eye on in the background. The players that we don't even really consider at the minute, like. So no, I think in the long run, I think he'll be a great appointment, like, in my view, anyway.
Yeah, and I think Stephen Kenny fully deserves his opportunity and his chance to lead his country out as a manager. We might just go back a little bit to obviously, Darren, you were saying you're season ticket holder since 2014. So you would have caught obviously Martin O'Neill, Roy Keane, Mick McCarthy as well. When you compare, would you, first of all, would you have been a fan of Mick McCarthy's style of play and what he was doing for Ireland? Because I suppose from a fan's perspective, results were coming, we were scoring goals, but maybe the performances weren't very nice on the eye. But again, we were getting those results. We were getting to playoffs. Obviously got to the playoff under McCarthy. Did you like kind of what McCarthy did in his second stint as manager?
Yeah, I thought, to be honest, I thought our home performances were really good. I think just what was kind of let us down was that game in Switzerland where there was horrible conditions, and he got it wrong that night. I think the last game against Denmark, that was probably the best I'd seen Ireland playing at home in for a while, when we were, chasing. We gave them a fortunate goal. We were chasing the game. We were the better team all night. And I think, yeah, I mean, really, I don't think, the away games are a bit patchy. Gibraltar away was a bit patchy as well. And I know, again, there was kind of freak weather conditions there when you had an apparent very bad wind that kind of couldn't let them play. But home, I thought we really weren't. Anytime we played at home, we were kind of the dominant team. Switzerland at home, I thought we were very good as well. And I thought the way McCarthy was probably got the best use out of Glenn Whelan that I've seen kind of any of the Irish managers do that. He really, Whelan's last 12 months in Iron Jersey were probably his most. I know he started well under Trapattoni as well, but I think the start and the end of his career, really, he kind of, the player we kind of use, because he's actually a very good player. Like, but we kind of sometimes didn't always kind of use him the way we could have, because he can actually go forward a bit and he can kind of pass the ball a bit, and he is, as a kind of defensive kind of martial anchorman, he's excellent. Sometimes that gets kind of overlooked by people. I think McCarthy, he kind of simple, he kind of gives players a lot of belief in themselves, and he gives them a bit of freedom. He trusts the fullbacks to bomb up and down the pitch, and I think that was kind of evident, particularly in the last home game against Limerick, how kind of no fear some of the players had it going up and found. I think just the away from home results were cost us there, but I also have to acknowledge he didn't get that much time. He was kind of straight into the job. There was no friendlies. Now Mick is well used to that. He's kind of the type of jobs he gets. A manager kind of gets sacked, Mick comes in. You've seen Ricardo, if he's able to hit the ground running, and I thought he was a bit unlucky not to get a crack at that playoff in the Euro. That you'd think he deserved that one. It was just the way, it was very unfortunate the way the coronavirus hit, and then the contract situations that he couldn't do it. Yeah, it's hard to know. And then I even thought, by Kenny, we played very well that night and we were lucky not to win. But yeah, it was unlucky for Mick McCarthy, I'd say.
Anto, if Mick McCarthy was in charge for that playoff game against Slovakia, would we be in the Euro 2020/21?
I think on the night I thought we played well enough to win the game. So I think we were just unlucky on the night. I don't think necessarily if Mick McCarthy was the manager or anything else would have changed as such, but it was a game that we probably left behind us, really, like, and then obviously the lottery of the penalties then cost us on that. But I wouldn't necessarily say if we had McCarthy still at the helm. Now I do agree he should have been left off to have the crack at it himself before Kenny came in once we secured the playoff. But No, I just think it was just one of them nights. I think if they were still there now, we'd still be struggling to score. It's just the way things were going that night. It's just one of them nights, unfortunately for us.
Yeah, and I suppose again in different circumstances, different environments, different non-pandemic environments, there would have been obviously the two-legged playoff as well. And those sort of factors come into play, and it's very difficult, I think, as a new manager coming into that situation. But I think it was all, maybe you might be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was obviously based on contracts and handing over and stuff like that. And a contract was a contract. It was agreed Stephen Kenny would take over on whatever date it was, and that obviously overlapped with the playoff being pushed further down the line due to the pandemic. I was just doing a little bit of research beforehand over Kenny's 8 games in charge, and in 5 out of the 8 games, we had more possession than our opponents. Obviously, the England game, we'd nowhere near kind of the possession that we would have liked. The performance was nowhere near what we would have liked to see. But again, we were up against a very, very good England side. I know we had a couple of lads missing as well, a couple of players missing. When you guys watched the first game, when I say first game against Bulgaria, the 1-1 draw, I know it was a Duffy equaliser late on. Did you see signs in that game that, okay, there's a little bit of improvement, we're getting the ball down? I think we had 63% possession, 14 shots, and we outpassed Bulgaria with 581 passes in that game. Did you see something in that, Dowling, that we would have been optimistic by?
Yeah, no, definitely. Especially away from home, or that's not something normally Ireland do. So typically firing away from home, it's going to be trying to hang in there, keep it tight at the back, and then maybe push on your last 50 minutes if they're tiring and try to get a break. Yeah, for us to play like that away from home was unheard of. Definitely, yeah. No, the way you played and the ball retention, all that has been very good. But the issue is that it's up top, we're lacking a bit of quality. I think we need the likes of maybe Adam Idak, and needs to kind of mature a bit. Like, I know he was quite good for in 21 as a natural goal scorer there, and has kind of scored a few times in Norwich, but it's a bit different at international. He needs time. He's quite young as well. Same with Troy Parrott. Yeah, no, the performances have been very positive from Kenny and what he's trying to do. I think we just it's going to be like the Nations League. I personally don't rate it too highly as a competition, so I was okay if the results were not going to be, but the performances were going. When we're in a World Cup campaign, you have to get the ball in net, and if it means that our quality isn't kind of good enough by passing it around and trying to get people in, if it means the ball over the top is going to be the only way that does it, then you have pacey lads like Conley in that try to get something, and unfortunately that's where we're going to have to play. They're encouraging, but bear in mind we're in a World Cup campaign and we have to win, so we do need to revert back to the way that works for Ireland. If it's not working after 75 minutes, just get like some McLean and fast lads and maybe try to get balls in over the top.
Yeah, and I think we can all agree on what the negatives have been under Kenny, that obviously we're lacking quality when it comes to the final third, whether that's a cross, a final pass, and obviously scoring goals, which they haven't done. I think isn't it just the one under Stephen Kenny, a Duffy header in the 90-something minute. So I think we can all agree on the negatives, but Anto, positives in those games, and I think maybe not in all the games you could have taken positives, but yeah, for me, you could see that they were trying to come up with a style of play. They were trying to get the ball down and play, as opposed to playing a long ball up to the centre forward or into space and getting James McLean or a Robbie Brady or McGoldrick or someone to chase the ball down. What positives would you say were encouraging?
think like just the stats you were talking about there, guys, like that just shows straight away that the instruction is definitely coming to get the ball down and play a little bit more. And if it means that we have to go and keep the ball and knock it back rather than just give the ball away, that's what he wants to happen. He's willing to let the attack build and build and nearly go through phases rather than just hoofing it and saying, James McLean run after it there or somebody like that. Which now, sometimes, don't get me wrong, at times you need to do that to get it going. But I definitely think straight away from the few games, there's a lot of positives. Even simple stuff. Now, I know we haven't got the goal scores at the minute and we've only scored the one goal. But if you look at the 8 games he's been in charge, I think we've conceded 7. But if you take out that England game, we've only conceded 4 goals then out of 8 games, which shows that we're getting a little bit tighter at the back as well. So I think generally it's a lot very positive on what he's trying to do. And I think that's why I'd be very much in the Kenny in camp, because I think, another year's time, I know we're heading into a time now of the qualifiers and all, and, you can't necessarily wait and be chasing, especially in the group that we're in and stuff like that. But I definitely think with the style of play he's trying to instill there, the results will come. Like, it's just going to take a little bit of time. And, I definitely think there's more positives than negatives since he's took over. I think that's the main thing. And I think that's the main thing people need to see, that, the positives outweigh the negatives. Give him a bit of time and that'll just continue to increase, in my view, anyway, on it.
Yeah, and I think I personally do agree with you, Kenny in. I can see what he's doing, but I also can I can see it from a fan's perspective where no goals or 1 goal, sorry, in 8 games. Like I said, if you include the England game, 7 goals conceded. I just think as a football fan, you're going to be disappointed if your team, your country, don't score goals. You're going to look at a result and say, yeah, we were shit again today, even though it might not show a true reflection of the whole game. At the end of the day, as a lot of football people say, the most important stat is the one in the top left-hand corner, which is the score at the end of the day. It doesn't matter possession, doesn't matter about the shots on target, the passes you have. You got to put the ball in the back of the net, and that's the main thing. Obviously, the lack of quality. But again, I was just looking through in terms of shots that we had in games, and out of just obviously excluding the England game, I think in all the games we've had double digits in terms of shots. Bar which game was it? I think it was the home game against Bulgaria, where we actually had no shots on target. We had 7 shots in total, none on target. All the other ones we had double digits in terms of shots. But we had no more than 4 shots on target in any of the games. So again, it shows that potentially we are getting into those positions, but we're not finishing the opportunities, or we're not making the most of the opportunities, or those opportunities are falling to, at the time, obviously not a David McGoldrick, not a Robbie Brady, not a James McLean, the people that you might want the ball to fall to. Obviously we have this time next week Serbia, it's next Wednesday, Serbia away, followed by Luxembourg at home, and then the friendly against Qatar. We chatted obviously last week on the podcast saying, is that Qatar game necessary with the current circumstances? Is even all these international games necessary with a pandemic? Can they be pushed down further down the line? So we won't get in too much into that. What I'd like for us to do is to potentially analyze the squad that's available and potentially pick a team out of that squad. Obviously at the moment, Randolph is out. Kelleher is pretty much a doubt. I know Westwood played last weekend, so he's very much obviously in contention. Egan's out. James McCarthy's out. I heard today Conley's borderline whether he'll be available or not. I don't know how true that is.
There's very mixed stories about him, isn't there? First it was a broken rib. Now I read today it was a COVID violation he had. That's why he hasn't been playing.
Yeah, so fingers crossed that he is available, because again, I think he brings something very, very different to the team. Gives us
100%.
an outlet, a completely different outlet, a bit more of a threat. Obviously, Adam Ida is out, McGoldrick's retired, Jack Burns out. I'm sure I missed one or two. But we might just start, Dowling, with the goalkeeping situation. We will just say, no, I'll put the question to you. If Kelleher's fit, does Kelleher start for you, or would you look elsewhere?
Kelleher starts. I think he's played something. It's 7 games for Liverpool this year, and he played in the Champions League. Had a great performance, and he seems very confident young lad. So I have no worries about him starting. Then the backup, I think, he said Westwood there, but also to mention the young Gavin. I know he's only still a teenager, but Gavin
Bazunu.
Yeah, I have no trouble with him. I've seen him play for the under-21s and Shamrock Rovers, and he's a very confident young lad. So at least got some game time this year, I think, at Rochdale. So I think keepers were probably okay. The stand-in goalkeepers are of good quality. We're not chopping down too far down the pecking order, if you know what I mean. And then Randolph, he doesn't always start all the time for his club either. So that's kind of normal. But the keepers we have, I'm happy that the quality is there. That they can do a decent job, and there won't be any kind of silly types of goals that have been conceded. So I think keeper okay. Where it gets interesting is we've talked about that, I guess, in the second is the defence and the midfield, what that will be, and how do you accommodate Matt Doherty and Coleman? That's the real kind of
that's the million dollar question. But I think Gavin Bazunu got player of the month for Rochdale. I think if I can remember reading correctly.
I think he got their own clubs player of the year though.
Club player of the year, was it?
I don't think it's the league
Yeah, but still, that's a very encouraging sign. And again, you look at that, as Dowling said, Randolph's not necessarily playing at club level. Westwood, I know, has been injured for a while. Kelleher is getting a game here and there for Liverpool. Mark Travers isn't playing. I know he was on loan at Swindon, was recalled to Bournemouth and hasn't played since. So Gavin Bazunu is actually probably the player gaining the most experience and getting the most minutes on the pitch. Again, Kelleher fit, does he start for you, Anto?
100%, yeah. I think he will be the one to start as well, even the 21 connection then as well with Kenny and all. I don't think there'll be a question over who starts once he's fit. I definitely think he'll be in. I think Gavin Bazunu could get called up as well, because I looked a little bit. I knew we were talking about this. I looked a little bit into stuff with him. He's played 30 games this year for Rochdale, so out of all the keepers that we have available, he's the one that's getting the most game time. So I definitely think he'll be in the squad, but I definitely agree Kelleher is number one once he's fit.
Yeah,
learn to go.
And I think as well for what Stephen Kenny wants to do in terms of he wants to be able to play out from the back, he wants to be able to pass the ball. Kelleher is probably the best suited out of all the keepers that are available, I think, in that situation. But again, I'm going to put that question to you. Kelleher is not fit. Randolph's not fit. Who are you going for then? Because that could be the choice that Stephen Kenny has to make. Anto, I might come to you first on this one.
Well, I kind of did up a mock squad of who I pick as a full squad, and the second choice I had on it was Mark Travers, just because he's been in the squads before and stuff like that. I think he's 2 caps or something like that. So I think if Kelleher's not fit, I think he'll be the go-to guy then. I don't think he'll put Gavin Bazunu in yet, unless he's really stuck. But I think if Kelleher's not fit, I think he'll definitely go Mark Travers. I think will be the other one, because when I looked at the list of the keepers as well, them 3 guys are good and Randolph's still good and all that. But after that, then it's a bit checky after that now, I think, of quality really. So yeah. I think Travers will definitely be the one in if Kelleher's not fit.
Yeah, the only other goalkeeper I could think of was Kieran O'Hara.
Yeah, he was in the last squad. So
Burton Albion, I think, former Man United. Is he still actually part of the United, or is
he's on loan still at Burton?
On loan, isn't he? Dowling, would you agree bringing in a minute man in Mark Travers as number one if Kelleher wasn't fit, or would you be looking at more of a more experienced goalkeeper in Westwood?
Neither. I would go bold and give Gavin Mazul a shot. I think I seen him play Europa League a few years ago, 2 years ago for Rovers, and he was very, very impressive then. And he won't be. I don't think he'll be phased out of his deck, and he has been. Was training in the first team of Man City for some time. He would be around world class players, and now he's getting game time at Rochdale. And he's probably got the most minutes out of all the keepers this year, so I wouldn't be too phased if he was in. Plus, again, he has kind of come through the ranks underage, and he's not.
Yeah, Dowling's decision there reminds me of a podcast I listened to where Stephen Kenny was talking about when he was obviously with the 21s, and he'd obviously just gotten appointed the Ireland manager for obviously 2 years down the line, and he was talking about he doesn't necessarily want to select the best player available. He wants to select the best player with the best potential, which is always interesting. So he was obviously plucking players from 17s, 18s, 19s, as opposed to just your 20-year-olds or 21-year-olds or whatever. So I think yourself and Stephen Kenny will get on very well, Dale, in terms of how you're thinking and looking to the future and looking to give lads opportunities. Again, would I start Gavin Bazuna?
See, I don't. It's that we're behind closed doors, aren't we, in Serbia?
Yeah.
So you won't have an intimidating crowd behind them, right? Like you typically when you go to Belgrade. I don't think he'll get nervous. I don't think he'll do anything silly. I think he'll be a calm head. I don't see him doing anything silly, and he's a fantastic shot stopper. Maybe his ball distribution isn't as good as Kelleher's, but I can't see him letting Ireland down. Basically, maybe he does start, and it's not. Yes, it is from deep, but it's we are behind closed doors. It's not this typical Serbian hostile atmosphere we see. So,
yeah, that's that is a fair point.
I think he's a really good goalkeeper, but the thing I'd say about it from Kenny's point of view is if he does put him in, and God forbid, he makes a mistake or something, because Kenny's under a little bit of pressure of people talking about how the start has been and all that. Then all of a sudden people saying, "Oh, you put a 17-year-old in goals," rather than saying, he put a Mark Travers in, or people that maybe haven't played as much football as Gavin. But the fact, because of his age and all, I just can't see it happening. I just think it'd be too much of a risk, even though I think he's a really good goalkeeper. I've seen him playing for Rovers a good few times and stuff like that. And I've seen him a little bit playing for Rochdale this year, and there's no doubt he's a great keeper and has plenty of potential, definitely to be Ireland's number one for 20 years. But I just think it's be a massive risk if, God forbid, he came out for a cross and he dropped it or something, and he drops it to a Serbian fellow, taps it into the net. I just can't see Kenny taking that risk, as much as he might believe in him and stuff. I definitely think it'd be last resort for him to stick him in now.
Yeah, and I would tend to agree, Anto. But then you could throw in the argument, Kelleher, that realistically, how many games has he played for Liverpool? And I think Jamie Quinn, I can't remember if he mentioned on the podcast or when we were chatting off air, but he was saying Gavin Bazuna has played more games.
Yeah.
And the fact that he'll probably be better developed in a couple of years' time as opposed to Kevin Kelleher, because he's playing more games, he's getting more opportunities and experiences. But again, that could be another debate that we could probably spend all evening on. We might move on, as Dowling said, an interesting area of the pitch is the defenders. But before we start naming names and picking players, does anyone else think or see an opportunity for Ireland to play with 3/5 at the back with wing backs, maybe to accommodate Seamus Coleman, Matt Doherty, but also to play Matt Doherty and Enda Stevens in their preferred positions, because that's where they've both excelled. Obviously at Wolves for Matt Doherty last season, we see him struggling this season when it comes to playing as a right back for Spurs. And the Stevens has always pretty much been a left wing back for Sheffield United. Anyone else agree with me on Ireland and Stephen Kenny looking at a 3/5 at the back with wing backs?
Yeah, it's not too far out. The only thing is that the midfield is probably where all our talent is at the moment. So if you bring them through, that means you've got three to pick from. So who gets the other slot? You have Hendrick playing well. You have Knight, Malumbi. Conor Hurahan was one of Ireland's better players in the last campaign. So then who the other three then become? It's the big kind of topic then. Who do you leave out? Because that's probably where our most of us. And then Alan Brown as well. I mean, he's probably our best chance of a goal with his. I know he hadn't scored for him yet, but he does. He's fairly consistent at putting them in net for Preston. So then the question is, who would you leave out in midfield then? If you do that.
Yeah, just before we touch on obviously midfield, we might just go through defenders, and I'm just going to throw this out there. If I was Stephen Kenny, I'd look at a back three with two wing backs, as in I'd be looking at obviously Matt Doherty one side, Enda Stevens the other. I'd be looking at Seamus Coleman as one of the three centre backs. I'd be looking at Shane Duffy, and again, his form, I do at times question, and I think Dowling mentioned at the start of the episode, of his positioning and in terms of the high lines and stepping out. Like I was at the you might have been at as well. I think it was the Denmark game where was it Fabian Schär for Switzerland. Fabian Schär for Switzerland literally ran the whole length of the pitch, but it was like Shane Duffy was 10 yards behind John Egan and literally Schär ran into the box and obviously put the ball in the back of the net. But I remember looking, because I was right up the back of the Aviva, and you were looking down, you could see so much space between Shane Duffy and the other centre half in terms of he's right back almost in no man's land between Darren Randolph and the defensive line. But I would, based on he's probably her biggest threat, and you mentioned Alan Brown for a goal, but I think Shane Duffy's our biggest threat is when it comes to goal, and that might show you how we're lacking in quality further up the pitch.
And then defenders and their just goal scoring records.
I know, man. I know it's crazy to think, and yet he only has. Well, he's 4 goals for Ireland. I think it is. The other one, which might be debatable, but I was looking at Kieran Clark, bringing him back in as a centre half. I think he plays well for Ireland. He's not afraid to get stuck in, and I think he's the next best option when we are obviously without John Egan. What are you thinking in terms of the back line, Anto?
I think I agree with you. I think they should play the wing backs so I wrote down like a team if I was to pick the team, and I the same as you. The only thing I had up in the air was maybe playing Long or Clark. That was which on, but I definitely think Coleman can come back into the 3 and all, and because I think, say if you play Matt Doherty and you don't play Coleman, and say you were to play Long, Duffy, and Clark, I think you're definitely losing something then by not having Coleman still there, But no, I think when it comes to an international team, you need to play who are like your best players to a degree. And, I know it's not going great for him at the minute, but if you can get Doherty back playing to a wing back that he doesn't play with at Spurs, that's where we'll see the best from him. And then as well as that, I think by playing Coleman as the right of a 3 gives him that bit of cover to get forward a little bit more, because that's definitely where he's better going forward than he is defending. So at least then you still have Coleman there to give him a bit of cover. And I still stick, seeing a little bit going online about people saying Duffy shouldn't be in the squad and all. But I think that's crazy. Like, he definitely should still be. He's never let Ireland down, let's put it that way. So, and if you take him out, who do you put in? That's the other question, Yeah. So I had the 5, and I'd say just on game time as well, Clark probably just edges out Kevin Long for me. But I'd have the same 5 then as yourself, like.
Dowling, how do you fit Seamus Coleman and Matt Doherty into the same team, or do you?
If I had to pick one, I would go with Seamus, just as he is a better, I think, all-round player, and he is the leader of the team. I think that was lacking in one good game when Coleman was missing, kind of bit of leadership. In regards to Shane Duffy, I would still. Sorry, I know I mentioned about his line, but he's also our best defender from set pieces as well. So you have to balance that out as well. I think I would probably go with Clark as well, and I think if Stevens is he's had a bit of injury, but if he's fit, he can play the other left wing back. But no, I think if everyone's fit, I think that the back three and then the wing back kind of pick themselves. The question I think now is the fun bit when we pick the centre mids. Who do they be? Because this is where we have actually some talent and players that are on form. If you have Jason Knight, you have Josh Cullen, you have Malumbi, then you have the Hendricks, the Brady's, you have Connor Hurahan, Alan Brown. How are you going to accommodate and what's going to work? So that's what we need to.
Yeah. So if we'll say if we're all in agreement of playing 5 at the back, 2 wing backs, do we play then almost like 2 holding midfielders, maybe potentially allowing one to push a little bit forward, but also has the capability to sit? And then do we play or opt for almost like 3 forwards? So a striker and a right wing and left wing forward. Is that what we're looking at in that sort of formation, or what way have you kind of put it together, Dowling?
What do I think is best, or what do I think Kenny will do?
I suppose both.
I'd like to see Jason Knight play. Then I think you need either Brady or Conor Hurahan to play, just to get some distribution, going like in set plays and being able to spread the ball. For me, Conor Hurahan still edge it. Since he got that low move, he's back on form. He's scoring every other week, and there's grabbing assists as well and playing nice football. Then my other midfield, probably, I'm not sure I probably would edge in Jeff Hendrick, based on what he's kind of previously has kind of always been fairly reliable, and then he's kind of a good workhorse around the place. That would be mine.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Anto, and obviously Dowling is a fan of Jeff Hendrick. Do you think it's time maybe to move on or move away from Jeff Hendrick? Do you think he's still living on your 2016 moments? For me personally, I just think at times he's been a huge disappointment for Ireland. But there has been a couple of games under Kenny where you saw him getting on the ball and actually turning and facing forward and trying to pass forward. But I think there was times under, obviously, Mick McCarthy, times under Martin O'Neill, where he was getting the ball and almost playing the simple pass. He was getting it to feet and playing it back to the centre half, or playing it back to the right back or to the left back. He wasn't trying to make things happen. He wasn't trying to create things. But I think I'm at the stage now with Hendrick where I just think maybe there's an opportunity for someone to come in there, possibly a younger player, possibly Malumbi, possibly Cullen, Alan Brown maybe. What's your stance with Hendrick, Anto?
He didn't make the cut for me anyway. I think a little bit like that. I think to a degree maybe living on past glory, and then obviously this season with the club he's at as well, I just think it's been a bit of a struggle. I don't see at the minute what he really offers too much. Like, I think he's solid without necessarily doing a whole lot, and I just think he doesn't offer enough for me on the ball, really, like, to be honest with you. I think he's definitely a player to still have around. I wouldn't say cut him completely out and not have him near the squad again or anything like that, but I just think maybe, especially going into a new campaign, I think this is the chance really for Kenny to come in. I know he's missing a couple of players, but kind of put down a stamp of, no, this is the way forward in his eyes. And I think that's what he'll do, because in a little bit of a mock team, I did play two holding midfielders. I kind of played a 2-3-1, like, and I picked Malumbi and Cullen, like, and just I think that might be the way forward for the future. And I think we've already touched on a little bit with the 21 stuff, that I don't think Kenny would be afraid to play either of them. I think he definitely trusts both of them. Even especially, I think Cullen should definitely play. Like, the move to Anderlecht's done him the world of good, and you know, everything that comes out of Anderlecht about him at the minute seems to be hugely positive, of nearly to the degree that they can't believe they got as good a player as they have, kind of thing. And so I think maybe it's going into a new campaign, maybe a little bit of changing of the guard, of not the same names playing there, and just a time to freshen up and give these lads a chance. You know, we've been talking these kind of 21 players up for since Kenny was there, really, since he took over, of maybe 2 or 3 years. We've been talking these players up, and maybe now is the chance going into a new campaign to give them the chance and see where we are really at with them. Are they ever going to be good enough, or are they not going to be good enough? So I would pick Malumbi and Cullen to play against Serbia.
And I kind of tend to agree with that, where it's almost an opportunity for Kenny to give these lads, and as a fan, as obviously an Ireland fan, I'm happy for that, for Stephen Kenny to give these lads an opportunity. And if it means we don't qualify, we don't qualify. But if there's progress being made, if there's lads being given opportunities, and there's we'll say a style of play, there's potential, I'd almost give up qualifying for World Cup. Even though obviously you'd love to see Ireland at a World Cup, I think I would almost give that up just to see a bit of progress and opportunities for the younger lads. Like like Dowling said, it is interesting looking at the midfield, because I think I agree with Dowling, that's where we have a lot of quality. It's just trying to find those partnerships, the ones that suit each other. Personally, I don't know if you have Hourihan in your team somewhere else, Anto, but I think you might be a bit mad leaving him out. Just in terms of just in terms of what he's doing on with his loan spell at Swansea at the moment. Dowling touched on it, that he's grabbing a goal or an assist every second game or so. And that's given him a huge confidence boost going into these games. And you look at the rest of the team, and there's not a lot of players with confidence at the moment. So I think I would have Conor Hourihan as one of those two that are sitting in front almost. And obviously when Doherty and Stevens push forward, you could almost have four in the midfield there. But I think I'd go with Malumbi in beside him, just because he's such a workhorse. I know he obviously didn't get much game time at Brighton. He's on loan. Who's he on loan at the moment?
Preston,
that's one. And I don't think he's getting too much game time there either at the moment. But I think he has shown, again, passion. He's shown that he's able to get stuck in the games that he has played for Ireland. So I think I would go for Malumbi and Hourihan as those two holding midfielders. So I think we're all in a disagreement there with our two. Dallin, just might come back to you. What do you think? Like, I know myself and Anto touched on not being Jeff Hendrick's biggest fan at the moment. What do you think he offers Ireland, or what positives do you see by having him in Ireland's starting 11 come Serbia next week?
Kind of the opposite to what you said. I think he would bring experience to a relatively inexperienced midfield. He is, he's played a lot of Premier League games. I think maybe with Martin towards the end of the campaign, he was kind of playing him slightly out of position, just back to the goal, and it doesn't really suit him. He has played well. He started well for Newcastle. I know they had that dose of COVID going around the camp, and a lot of players were hit, and they had missing a lot of players, and some got it quite bad. So I wouldn't, Steve Bruce is kind of using an excuse as well, but that would have quite an impact. If when I heard players weren't even able to train, they could only train in like small numbers, and literally were putting, like a Sunday league team, putting a squad together like literally at the last minute. So I wouldn't judge him too much lately on like based on what happened at Newcastle, Chris. But I think for Ireland, he's unspectacular. I agree since the Euros, but I think we kind of played him out of position. He does. He's a good worker, and I'd say he can pass the ball well if he's behind another player's again position. He does have a nice shot as well. Again, might trouble a keeper, which we're going to have to get players that are not afraid to have a go. So that's why I would keep him in. I know we could probably go Alan Brown as well, but I think first game of the campaign, Serbia, where he is going to be a bit of physicality as well. I put Jeff in for that, but I see why but everyone kind of tied Kick on to become the player. He did after Euros, didn't. I mean, before the Euros, where was he playing? He was playing at Derby, and then he went to Burnley, and he did very well at Burnley. He went to Newcastle and was linked with AC Milan. I know it's not the AC Milan of old, but like he is quite a good player. Like, you don't play that many Premier League games as he played 100 plus and not be a good player. He is, but he has quality. Maybe his performance has been inconsistent, but I would never describe him as like one of the players that should not have been on the pitch. He was never like that bad. Just the expectation, I think, were too high. But I would keep him in just because it's going to be a relatively inexperienced midfield.
Yeah, and I think you make a lot of valid points in fairness, because I think when he first burst onto the scene with Ireland, he was almost playing as a number 10, as an attacking midfielder, and that's where we kind of saw the best out of Jeff Hendrick. And again, maybe like I personally do think it is a confidence thing when the Ireland lads come along to the Ireland camp and play internationals for Ireland. It's not the same. And I remember witnessing a goal at Burnley, and I think it was Brady, Hendrick and Stephen Ward all involved in pretty much 1-2 touch football. The three of them were involved in the goal. I think it was Hendrick that scored. It might have been Chelsea away. Can't remember who it was against. So I get your points, Dale, in the sense that he does have quality. You don't play 100 plus Premier League games for no reason. You don't get a move to, or a potential move to AC Milan. So maybe in this new system that we've come up with, maybe Jeff Hendrick would kick on to what we hoped we would see a lot more of in an Ireland shirt. I'm just going to throw it out there. Would anyone look at potentially Jamie McGrath being called up into the Irish squad based on his performances for St. Mirren? Couple of standout performances against Celtic and Rangers this season. I think he has double digits in terms of goals. I know some of them have been penalties, but still, at the end of the day, you're putting the ball in the back of net. You're an Irish player that's high on confidence at the moment, back from injury. Anto, could you see Jamie McGrath potentially breaking into the squad?
Yeah, I have him in the squad, in my squad anyway. Like I said, he's 10 goals in this season for St. Mirren, like 3 assists as well. I know, even just talking from you, both of us seem to follow him a little bit, of keep an eye on what he's up to and all, and he's definitely a standout player, although maybe for St. Mirren you mightn't think a whole lot, but he's doing it against Celtic, he's doing it against Rangers. I know, like when he was playing League of Ireland, he was doing it as well. So he's definitely made the transition very easily to Scottish football anyway. And it's not like some people say, he's playing Scottish football and all this kind of stuff, but he's doing it against Rangers and he's doing it against Celtic, and people see what Rangers have done this year up there. So like, I definitely think I'd have him in the squad, knocking around anyway. I don't think it'll do any harm, and I think it's something like I keep going on about a little bit of kind of the changing of the guard to a degree, and just a new fresh face around. I think he's one of the best talents we've come through that nobody seems to really see or talk about really, like. So I definitely have him in the squad anyway.
Yeah,
100%.
And when you look at St. Mirren, for example, sorry, Dale, I'll let you come in now in a sec. You look at St. Mirren, and they would have been thereabouts odds on for relegation, in the Scottish Premier League. And I know there's a couple of Ireland lads up there, and obviously the manager is Irish as well. So good kind of connection. But I think Jamie McGrath's performances has potentially warranted a call up. Maybe not an appearance for Ireland, but definitely in amongst the squad. I think he deserves it at this stage. Dowling, Jamie McGrath for the Ireland squad.
Yeah, I was a big fan of him at the Dock, and before the Dock was at Pats, was it? Yeah, no, I've been a big fan of him. He was always one of the up and come players in the league, people to watch out for. I mean, look, our next game is against. I certainly wouldn't show him in against Serbia, but then we have Luxembourg, home in Qatar. There's definitely room to show him in there. I mean, Luxembourg. I mean, I know we beat their under-21 team pretty convincingly last time, so I doubt there's no huge step up under. I doubt there's a huge step up between their under-21s and their senior side. So absolutely, they have him in the squad. I nearly also potentially the other Dundalk winger, Michael Duffy. I believe his transfer came through. He's a phenomenal talent as well. The question is, what I would hope is after Serbia and Luxembourg, we'll get some dropouts naturally due to injuries, and I would have him on standby certainly to get him some time, because he's a really good talent as well, and could be another option, because the system we're playing only works if Coleman and McDarty are fit. If either of them get injured, we have to rethink the whole thing as well. So we do need attacking players, and he's really a great talent. And yeah, I would have him on standby, allowing, because by the time we get to Qatar, there's going to be some injuries and some players that can't play.
Yeah, and you beat me to my next question. I was going to ask you, would there be any League of Ireland players worthy of a call up, especially with obviously Stephen Kenny in the position that he finds himself. Yeah, Michael Duffy, I think he's been an excellent servant for League of Ireland for Dundalk over the last couple of years. And obviously with the nationality transfer clearance has been put through. I think that's taken a couple of years as well. Anto, would you see anyone else maybe in the League of Ireland potentially breaking into the squad, just before we touch on maybe our front three?
I think there's a few knocking around, but I think for 2 qualifiers, I don't think you'll call any of them. I think maybe, like as Dowling was saying there, if he had a couple of dropouts after the qualifiers, he might go and look for a couple of them to come through. But I'm not sure what way the Qatar game falls with the league and all. I know there's the league starting this weekend and all that kind of stuff. I'm not sure how easy it'll be for him to get the players out.
That's an excellent point. I overlooked that,
especially with the COVID and all that kind of stuff as well. Like on top of that, the league starts.
The Qatar game still at home, is it? Because I believe
it's in Bulgaria, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's been moved to somewhere else in Europe.
I think it's Bulgaria, but just with the league starting this weekend, I can't imagine, because obviously you're going to look at, if he's going to take League of Ireland players, he's going to be taking the best League of Ireland players. Then all of a sudden, God forbid, there's a case of COVID in the camp. What way does that leave the league here? Never mind players coming back and all that. And I don't know if you've seen the story today about Lewandowski, either of you, to play against England.
No.
Got to do with the COVID rules for Germany to England. If he plays in England for Poland, he's to isolate for 2 weeks when he gets back to Germany, and he'll miss 3 games for Bayern Munich. So there's a bit of a club country battle going on there now at the minute.
Yeah, and obviously we touched on that last week. In terms of players having to quarantine when they come back from international duty. Obviously the same thing affects Jude Bellingham with Dortmund and his England call up. We might move on to obviously our front three then. Obviously with the 2 wingers potentially moving back into a midfield position. But for me, I went with Jason Knight. I just thought the couple of games that he's played for Ireland, he brought energy, he brought passion, kind of similar to Malumbi in a sense. And Jason Knight seemed to bring a little bit of quality. I know Wayne Rooney absolutely loves him. I pretty sure he has the captain's armband as well at Derby County, and that just shows what sort of a character, what sort of a leader, what sort of a player Jason Knight is. If Wayne Rooney is trusting you with the captain's armband at such a young age. So I went with Jason Knight on the right, and went with Robbie Brady on the left. Again, fingers crossed whether Brady will be fit or not. And maybe the controversial one up front, just went old school and said Shane Long. I don't know if you guys would agree with those three players. Might go to you first, Dowling.
Yeah, Jason Knight. I think I kind of had him in my kind of more of a in the middle. But no, we could certainly have Jason Knight there. Robbie Brady. If we're going to start with Hurahan, I think we can take out Brady and maybe swap him for McLean. I think or Connolly. I think we just need a bit more pace, around to shove them a bit. Yeah, and then up front, Shane Long will work. He'll hold the ball up. He still has great hang time in the air. His pace isn't gone, but I wouldn't have him in for the pace. I'd have him for his ability to hold the ball up. He still has that great aerial leap. And nice touch. Again, I think if you look at that, saying where the goal is going to come from, that's the next question now. Like, because I mean, I know Shane Long can score, but he's not like, just the thing. I mean, they're all good players, but I mean, this is where the argument comes on for Alan Brown. So I guess for chasing the game in the second half, we're going to have to look at Alan Brown coming on, or players that won't be afraid to have a go and try something. And things also on work. I'd also look at maybe bringing Daryl Horgan on. He's kind of done well since he's moved to Wycombe. Again, plays in periods. You can be great for 10 minutes, disappear for 10 minutes and that. But I think for chasing the game, have Alan Brown, Daryl Horgan come on that will try to do something. But overall, I think Gary, or maybe take out Brady. As I think Hurahan will cover us with the set plays and distributions, and like a bit more pace, because we're not picking Long for his pace. Even though he's not slow by any means, but he's not the rocket he once was.
Yeah, and I suppose another option, what we could kind of suggest to Stephen Kenny, if he's listening, is potentially go with two up top and have someone else in the midfield. That could be an option to leave a bit of space for Matt Doherty and the Stevens to push on even further forward on those wings. Anto, what way is your kind of front line looking?
Yeah, I played I always had the two holding midfielders. Then I played a one and then two strikers. Basically for the point you just made, to give Stevens and Matt Doherty space, really. I think if you crowd it too much, it just cuts out what you're trying to do, really, by having wing backs. So I played Conor Hurahan as the one, just kind of form he's in, etc. And then I agreed with yourself, just because, for being honest, we don't really have a striker when you look at the options and all. So I had Shane Long as well, just for the experience. He can hold the ball up. He's scored goals along the way. I think he's the best as far as that goes for what we have at the minute. And then just on the bit of news out today, I went with Aaron Connolly as well up top. As the two, fingers crossed, and he makes it and all that. I know people might say he might be a little bit rusty from the few weeks off and all that, but I think he just has that little bit of quality that if he's available, I think you play him. I don't think you don't play him, that kind of way. And I just think, if we were struggling in a game, he could go out and play a little bit wider and stuff like that. And if we're struggling on a side, and Hurahan could drop back in. So that's the way I went. I went with them three kind of as my attacking. But I was in two minds over between Long and Collins, but I just think Long has that little bit more. I know he's a bit more experienced and stuff like that. And especially with the team I picked is pretty kind of young through the middle and all that kind of stuff. So that's why I kept Long in.
Yeah, I obviously if Connolly was fit, I'd have Connolly in ahead of Shane Long. I do think actually, Anto, just when you mention it,
Is Connolly fit though, or is it you said with a COVID violation? Or
It's a rumor today or something
yeah,
came out that he's going to be
Connolly did
available now.
just yeah.
So we
so,
don't know.
so it's
Find
a
out tomorrow.
bit all over the place. Yeah, we'll find out tomorrow with the squad announcement on Thursday. But just the point that you made there, Anto, that you wonder maybe if an Aaron Connolly and James Collins or Shane Long and James Collins could work maybe as a two up front, where James Collins obviously more of a target man.
Hmm.
Shane Long, Connolly maybe running in behind, dropping short for the ball, kind of linking the play. That could be potentially an option. Like you said, Callum Robinson hasn't really been getting too much game. I think he played 23s for West Brom
Yeah.
the last couple of weeks. Shawnee Maguire kind of a goal here and there for Preston. Collins, I think he has about 10 goals this. I think he's about 9, 10 goals this season, but he hasn't played over the last couple of weeks. Um, Scott Hogan, 6 goals for a struggling Birmingham side. But again, I think the games that he's played for Ireland, he hasn't really shown too much from what I can remember. And again, amongst all those, there's a goal for Maguire, goal for Collins. I don't know if you want to give the goal to Callum Robinson, the I think it was the own goal against Gibraltar at home. Apart from that, are you putting all the responsibility on a young Troy Parrott? I don't know. Would you put him in, Dowling, or obviously I
Um,
think we'd all have him in the squad, but would you take a chance with him?
no, great player, but from stuff I've read, I wouldn't be overly impressed with his attitude, and we won't comment too much on this, but he's a bit to learn, needs to mature a bit. I have him in the squad, maybe off the bench, but I don't know. I haven't said that when I watched him play the 21s, and then that part of that was it the under 17 side that lost to Holland in that bizarre penalty shootout. I thought he was really exceptional and was going to like really go all the way. He was, then promising at Spurs, but if Mourinho is to be believed, he needs to, maybe take a step back. Certainly, yeah, he's a natural goal scorer. We need him in the squad. Potentially, if we have to choose him off bench, no, I wouldn't start. I'd rather long start. Even James Collins, if we could go with two, he's actually a much better player than I thought he was. When he was first called up, I was like, I just thought this lad's just big. But no, he actually is a nice player. He works hard and can nick a goal. No, not for me, Try Pirate, no.
Yeah, and
Then
I
Maguire was, I believe Shed Evans is now taking him out of the Preston side. Um, Again, Maguire off the bench. No, if I either go long up front, kind of on his own, kind of, or else if we did do two, put Long and Collins, kind of.
yeah, and I do think as well we have to remember Troy Parrott is 19 years of age. I think he's 19, isn't
Yeah,
he?
correct.
So again, there's been so much hype around Troy Parrott since the age of 15, 16. Um, and we also have to take that into consideration. I know he scored his first goal for Ipswich, or his first senior goal, which was obviously great to see. Again, a little bit of confidence going into an international break. Um, but again, I can see Stephen Kenny almost taking his time, using them in the right way, as opposed to just again chucking them in. Like we said, if Gavin Bazunu was to make a mistake, that would obviously be a lot of pressure then under Stephen Kenny as well, and maybe it could be the same for Troy Parrott. Um, but again, I think Downey, you mentioned maybe James McLean on the left. I kind of think at this stage James McLean again, great servant for Ireland, top top lad, plays with his heart on his sleeve, gives everything every single game, whether he comes on for a minute, whether he's playing 90 minutes for Ireland. He gives everything. I just think maybe he will be more beneficial to the team as an impact player coming
Yeah,
off the bench for
something like
maybe
that.
the last 20 minutes. So that's kind of where I would have or push James McLean. And again, I think Alan Brown would be one of the first off the bench as well. I do think he provides a goal threat, and I think he was very unfortunate in a couple of those games where he got a lot of abuse afterwards because of his opportunities that he missed or opportunities that he didn't take, which I thought was very harsh. But I got to give him credit that he was in those positions. He was fine
Yeah,
getting himself
absolutely.
into those positions. So I think that was a great shout down and saying about Alan Brown potentially starting. And I was almost had him in the starting team, but I was just kind of looking for a bit more balance and based on Conor Hourihane. But then again, maybe if I was to change to a similar formation to Anto, I'd have Alan Brown in that team. Um, so I don't know. Do you guys look at that squad and say it's I don't want to say it's a quality squad, but it's not as bad as we thought.
No,
Maybe just the final third is where we're lacking.
and then I think you're just lacking natural goal scorer. And then of that list, Stripe Parrott probably is the most natural. Like, if you look at his goal at the weekend, there was a real striker's instinct. I'm not sure if you've seen the goal. It was the spot that kind of bad pass up from the defender. That's kind of that's Robbie Keane would pick on and something like that. I wouldn't see the likes of against some James Collins along picking up on an error like that. It's that kind of awareness, and that's quite good. He has at that age. Showed him in against Serbia away. I know it's again behind closed doors, but no, I would for the first hour at least, I would like kind of some experience up top, and for chasing a goal. Yeah, he is one of the ones you have to look to, similar to Alan Brown. I said it's actually not. It's not really a bad squad. There is quality there, particularly in the midfield. There are some good players. It just you need players that are natural strikers that are getting positions, are hungry for a goal, rather than kind of relying on the kind of midfield to kind of almost put it on a plate, because it doesn't kind of always work that way.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, Anto, did you have Glenn Whelan or Aidan McGeady in your squad? I know you were talking about changing at a guard, but I know there's a lot of talk this week around Aidan McGeady making an appearance in the squad again. What's your thoughts on that?
Neither of them made my squad anyway. I think the McGeady thing's getting probably a little bit blown up just because he's in a little bit of good form, and there's so much talk of how this Ireland squad is struggling at the minute. I think that's the only reason his name has been put around. Same again, like the two of them I think have been great servants when they were selected and all that, and did what they could, etc. But I just think I think we're at the stage where we probably have better players than them, and we don't necessarily need them anymore. And like like in a year and a half time, and we're still playing these qualifiers, where's Glenn Whelan going to be then, realistically? And McGeady, say they're not going to be playing super football every week. And I know McGeady's playing in Sunderland and all that. It's a big club, but it's not that the level's not great, but I'd like to think we have better knocking around. I think people have been so hard on the Ireland squad of late, and I really think it's only a striker is all we're struggling for. I think if we could find somebody that's half as good as what, say, Robbie Keane was, I don't think we'd be having a talk of how poor the squad is and all, because I definitely think we have the squad there. Even you think, even talking between us here, picking our team, and we're talking about people coming off the bench. We're not talking about lads coming off the bench just to get them off the bench. We're talking about lads that can come on and actually impact the game and make something happen. We're talking about Alan Brown. It's whether able to come off and do something. McLean comes off the bench for 20 minutes. He's going to give you everything he has for 20 minutes. So we're not talking about, just bringing players on for the sake of it. And, we're talking about Troy Parrott maybe coming off the bench and being able to nick a goal and all that. And unfortunately, I think for as far as point on Trey Parrott, I think, is that because we're lacking so much in a striker, and there's been a bit talk about his records coming up and all that, people have put such a hype on him to be the next big thing, and maybe to a degree that's got to him and in his own head. I know he's, from what you hear anyway, he's not necessarily the most screwed on off the pitch and stuff like that. So hopefully, like, you know, being out alone and stuff like that sorts that for him, and he will be the fella. But I just think because we're lacking so much for a striker, we're crying out for, like, oh, please, you be the next Robbie Keane, or, you know, and that's what the problem is, when he might necessarily ever be that. But I think, like, we definitely have the squad, so I don't think we need to be going back looking at the likes of McGeady and people like that anymore. I think we should be focusing on, like, I'd prefer to see, like, Jason Knight getting a run in the team, or even like we're saying with Jamie McGrath, people like that getting a run in the team other than McGeady, because them lads are still going to be there come the next campaign, even where the McGeady's not. You know, like, I know you want to do well in this campaign, but I think, especially from Stephen Kenny's point of view, it seems from what he does, he'll have his focus a little bit ahead of where your average fan will be looking. So that's why I don't think either of them will. I wouldn't say it even crossed his mind, if I'm being honest. I'd be very shocked to see either name appear now.
Yeah, and I think we also have to take into consideration how times have changed from the times Ireland players were wearing these jerseys, where we had players who were competing for league titles. We had players playing Champions League football on a regular basis. We pretty much our whole squad were based in the Premier League, and obviously now you do go through that squad, and you might say where we are lacking in quality is where players are obviously playing in Championship or potentially League One, but also like we all mentioned, Josh Cullen playing in a decent European league with a decent club, and again. I just think it's the times that we are in. You look at Stephen Kenny and how unlucky he has been, and if Mick McCarthy was in that situation, if Martin O'Neill was in that situation, I'd be still saying they were really, really unlucky to have as many lads injured, as many lads out with COVID. Just it was a tough start for Stephen Kenny, and it seems like it still is going to be a tough time, because I believe that obviously Premier League games, club football is still going on Sunday. The squad will then meet up in Manchester. So obviously there's none of this flying back to Ireland to fly to Belgrade. So they're meeting up in Manchester. They will train in Manchester, potentially on Sunday evening. So some players might have a game on Sunday. And then they will train again in Manchester on Monday, fly to Belgrade. Then on the Tuesday evening, they'll have a training session, kind of the traditional training session in the stadium the night before the game. So realistically, he has, Stephen Kenny and his coaching staff have 2.5 days, maybe 3 days at most, to try push a plan, ideas, tactics together. How unlucky, Dowling, do you think Stephen Kenny has been? And do you think us Ireland fans have to take that into consideration?
Absolutely, yeah. What you touched on, I mean, when those jerseys behind you were being played, there was, I think it used to be the case that you got a week, so you finish up on the Sunday, and then the next day wasn't until Saturday the earliest, so you had almost a full week with them. And if you got less than, I remember, like, players that played on the Sunday, like I think Brian Kerr would have came out and said, "Oh well, we lost some players one extra day." Now literally all you have is said 1 day, especially when we're going through the phase of trying to change the way we play. It's not easy, and I think this comes down to sometimes where you hear some international managers say there's qualification football and then there's tournament football. So like the qualification is kind of, it's not the prettiest methods, but we get there, and then you have tournament football. They really kind of play the way you kind of want to. I do have sympathy for him, but every international manager is in the same boat. That's unfortunately the way it is. disadvantage or advantage. Yeah, I mean that's what I hope the Nations League was kind of used for. I did like have some allowances that it would take time for the system to adjust. We've had, I think it's in 7 games now, so there should be some kind of familiarity in the squad what Kenny wants and what he wants to see. But at the same time, I do sympathise that it's a bit of a mockery one day, like before World Cup qualifiers. Really, all you have with your team, given players, will be, if you lose a day, some will play Sunday, can't play Monday. You lose a day flying. It's not much. Well, it's the same for everyone, so we can't be too complaining. But I do disagree with the whole FIFA, the way the international window is scheduled now. That it's not giving managers the fairest chance to prepare, and then that is why you don't really get many good games in the qualifiers because they're not getting a full chance to link up.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't remember the last time there was any European any qualifier in Europe where instead of we're taking back that match was great. Like there's some great results come in, but there's never like really been an outstanding match to qualifiers in a long time.
Yeah. And then we might just go on to the actual games itself. Serbia away. What are you hoping for? What do you think the best outcome is from an Ireland perspective? We also look at Luxembourg, and by all accounts, yes, they're ranked where they're ranked, but I believe, based on reports and based on a couple of podcasts I've listened to, they're kind of almost in a false position. They've actually improved a decent amount. So a lot of people are saying don't take Luxembourg for granted. And then obviously Qatar is the friendly. What's the best case scenario, do you think, Anto? 6 points, 3 points, 4?
I'd like to say 6, but I think if we get away with 4 points, I think he'd be more than happy because you're getting Serbia away out of the way as well. That kind of way. I know, like there's the argument say it's behind closed doors and all that kind of stuff, but like Serbia are no mugs when you look at some of the players they have. Like there's some top players like playing in their team. Like even your man playing for Lazio there, the United were linked with the midfielder Savage. Like I think United, the rumor was 80 million or something for this guy. Like then I know they've Jovic there, the striker that plays back with Frankfurt now, but he's on loan from Real Madrid. So like they're not mugs like that. We're just gonna show up and walk over. But on the other side, I do think they are there for the take. And if you look at, say, Scotland getting through against them into the Euros and all, I'd like to think if we were playing Scotland tomorrow, that we'd be in a position to beat Scotland. So I can't see why we shouldn't be going into the game thinking we can beat Serbia. Then Luxembourg, you're saying there they've improved a little bit, but you have to be beating them handy enough. I don't think it'll be, like you said, I don't think it'll be like a landslide scoring like that people will expect. Like I think I've seen somewhere in their 8 qualifiers for the Euros, they only conceded 16 or something now, which isn't for what people will think when they hear Luxembourg. They'll think, these guys are going to get slapped 7-8-0 by teams. They're obviously not getting slapped like that. And I think Lithuania finished bottom of their group, which I know a couple of years ago, I think England struggled against the Lithuania side. So it won't be an easy game, but I think if he gets a point against Serbia and beats Luxembourg, he'd be happy enough. The Qatar game, I don't think anybody really cares. I think it's just one of them games that, because FIFA say it has to be played more so than anything. And I think it's just maybe a little bit of a money spinner, kind of got to do with the World Cup and all that in Qatar, more than anything else really, like, and a bit of publicity and all that kind of stuff. But
yeah,
I think if you offered me 4 points now in 2 games, I'd take it and move on and be happy enough with that. Like,
yeah, I think Shane mentioned last week on the podcast in regards to the friendly against Qatar that they're potentially in our group to play friendly matches, so it kind of has to go ahead. It's their preparation for the World Cup, but again, that's another argument. Dowling, do you share the? I have to say, lads, like I was kind of expecting this podcast to be quite negative and a bit kind of pessimistic, but after chatting to you and putting our points across, I feel a little bit more optimistic going into these games. Um, Dowling, do you think just scoring a goal will be important? Um, and you share the same optimism as Anto picking up potentially 4, maybe 6 points.
Yeah, I'd take 4 points absolutely for offer. I don't quite Anto quite much. Serbia are no mugs. It will be difficult. Probably see that being a 1-1 draw rather than. I think we will score. I think the players want it, and I think we are getting chances, and but the law of averages, the more chances you get, the better chance you have of scoring. So we will create chances. Luxembourg, yeah, right, probably not as bad as people might think. But I watched the under-21s play the last year, and I wasn't overly impressed. I can't see the way they are set up. Like, is there that much of a jump between their senior and their under-21 team? I'd expect us to win. I don't know. It won't be a landslide. I'd say it'd be 2-0 probably. So yeah, 4 points to be delighted with. Then the Qatar game. I mean, look, it's a bit mad because I believe we play Luxembourg's at home, right? So we go to Bulgaria, then we go to Serbia, then we come back to Dublin, and then we fly out to Bulgaria to play Qatar, which I can see a lot of the Premier League managers pick up the phone saying, "Here, you have a tight hamstring, you have to come out." So I fear what the squad will actually look like by the time we get there, and I could see us losing that because I just think that squad is going to be so depleted by the time we get to Qatar, and then because of the travel arrangements, there's going to be players getting pressure from their managers saying, "Here, assuming this game, it's not like you're playing in Dublin, which is like whatever it is, like a 40-minute flight. You have to fly to Bulgaria. We're in a pandemic as well. There's going to be like, here, whatever injury you have to do, make it up." And so that's my concern. I think the only we will have some hungry young players that might stay on, but I do fear what the squad's going to look like between natural injuries, players being put in pressure, and then.
Yeah, I do share the little bit of optimism that getting a point in Serbia would be a good thing. Whether I can see us scoring in Serbia now is another thing, potentially another 0-0 draw. But like Bodie said, we have to be beating Luxembourg. There's no two ways about it. We have to be beating Luxembourg.
Sorry there, guys, just for a second. I'm just looking here. I just noticed Serbia and Luxembourg were in each other's group for the Euro qualifiers.
Oh.
And Serbia bet them twice. But the second time they played, Serbia only bet them 3-2.
So maybe that's where they're touching on the improvement from.
And it was 3-1 in the first game.
Yeah. So we wouldn't normally associate Luxembourg with scoring goals. Like you said, we would have seen a minus 47 or something like that in the goal difference. So I don't think they can be taken for granted. But again, we still should be.
Should be
beating them, especially at home. Again, obviously no crowds. But lads, that was a nice way to kind of finish the podcast on a positive. And hopefully the results can follow next week. Obviously squad announcement tomorrow. We'll see how spot on we are with our teams as well come this time next week. But Anto, Dowling, thanks again for joining us on the fantasy kickabout, and hopefully we'll have you back on maybe in September for another round of internationals. Hope you enjoyed it, lads, and we will chat to you soon. All right.
Thanks, Gareth.
Absolutely. One thing I might finish on, we spent some time talking about the old guard been playing well, so the likes of Dayton McGeady. Wells Houlihan is playing phenomenal in League Two, so just give him a shout out to finish off.
Does he make your squad, Dowling?
He doesn't, but no, it's time to move on. But if we were mentioning old players, still producing the goods, I thought he deserved the mention.
Good man, Dowling. Best way we could have possibly finished an Ireland podcast. Final words, Wes Houlihan.